I drove 14 hours through a snowstorm just to be there when my daughter-in-law gave birth. But right outside the delivery room, my son coldly stopped me. "Your wife doesn't like you. Go away." I didn't argue, I just silently turned the car around and went home. 4 days later, a call from the hospital's finance department left me speechless. "Your grandson's bill is $8,500. The system recorded that you electronically signed it at midnight." But at that moment, I was stranded in a remote mountain area with no signal whatsoever. Thank you for being here with me. Before we begin, I'd like to ask, have you ever faced betrayal from someone you deeply trusted? Leave a comment and let me know. Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to read. Just a quick note, some details have been adjusted for storytelling and reflection. What matters most is the message it carries. 3 weeks before I would stand blocked at that hospital door, before I discovered the fraud, before I learned my own son was the architect of my destruction, the phone rang on a quiet Phoenix evening, and my daughter-in-law spoke my first name for the very first time. "Leland," Simone said, her voice soft and warm through the speaker. "The baby's due any day now. We'd love for you to be there when he arrives. You're going to be such an amazing grandfather." I'm Leland Madden, 52 years old, and I spent 3 decades as a financial crimes detective with Phoenix PD before retirement. I've interviewed cartel accountants, wire fraud artists, identity thieves who could forge a signature in their sleep. I know what a performance sounds like. I should have known. But for 3 years of marriage, Simone had called me Mr. Madden. Cold. Formal. The kind of distance that said I wasn't really family, just an obligation she tolerated at Thanksgiving. My son Desmond, 28 years old, had married her in a courthouse ceremony I wasn't invited to, and every interaction since had felt like I was intruding on their perfectly curated life in Denver. Now suddenly she was calling me Leland. "I'd love to be there," I said, and I meant it. "When should I drive up?" "Tonight, if you can," she said, and there was something in her voice, a sweetness that felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. "I just have this feeling he's coming soon. I want you here, Leland. Desmond does too." In the background, I heard a faint sound, a muffled voice, male, too quiet to make out words. Probably Desmond, I told myself. Probably just talking to the dog. "I'll leave in an hour," I said. "Perfect." Her voice brightened. "Drive safely. We can't wait to see you." She hung up before I could ask if they needed anything, before I could say I loved them, before I could do anything but sit in my living room holding the phone and wondering when my daughter-in-law, 34 years old and usually colder than a February audit, had become so warm. I should have listened to that small voice in the back of my detective's mind, the one that said people don't change their patterns without a reason. The one that had kept me alive through 3 decades of interrogations and stakeouts and wiretaps. But I was going to be a grandfather, and that excitement drowned out everything else. I packed carefully. Baby clothes I'd been buying in secret for months, stored in the hall closet, where my wife Claire couldn't see them and get her hopes up. A wooden rattle my own father had given me. My best shirt, the one I wore to weddings and funerals because meeting your grandson for the first time felt sacred. I left Phoenix at 8 that night, the desert sky still holding the last amber gold glow of sunset. 14 hours to Denver. I'd done longer drives on less sleep when I was chasing a case. The interstate stretched ahead, empty and dark. Arizona gave way to Utah, the desert flattening into something lonelier. I stopped once for gas in Flagstaff, twice more, for coffee that tasted like burnt rubber but kept my eyes open. Around midnight, I called Desmond's number to check in. Simone answered. "Leland," she said, and again that warmth, that unnatural sweetness. "How far out are you?" "Just hit the Utah border," I said. "Everything okay?" "Why are you answering Desmond's phone?" "He's asleep," she said quickly. "Resting up before the big day. You know how he is." I didn't actually. My son had stopped telling me how he was 3 years ago. "Well, tell him I'll be there by morning," I said. I will, she promised. Drive safely, Leland. It'll all be worth it. When did affection become a weapon I could no longer recognize? The question flickered through my mind somewhere past the Utah-Colorado border, but I pushed it aside. I was tired, paranoid. 30 years of seeing the worst in people had made me suspicious of kindness, and that wasn't fair to Simone. Maybe she'd changed. Maybe pregnancy had softened her. Maybe I was finally being let into the family I'd been locked out of. The mountains rose around me as the winter storm rolled in. I-70 climbed through freezing darkness, my headlights cutting weak tunnels through the blinding white sheets of ice. My GPS flickered once, twice, then stabilized. I called again at 4 in the morning somewhere past Vale. Simone answered again. "Almost there?" she asked. And this time I heard the slight strain in her voice, like she was performing a part and getting tired of the lines. "A few more hours," I said. "Is Desmond still asleep?" "Out cold," she said. "You must be exhausted. We'll have coffee ready." "Thanks," I said. And I wanted to ask why she kept answering his phone, why her voice sounded like she was reading cue cards, why every word felt just slightly wrong. But I didn't. Because I was going to meet my grandson, and nothing else mattered. The GPS glitched again near the Denver metro area, the screen freezing for a full 30 seconds before snapping back to life. The route recalculated. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white in the dashboard glow. My hands ached, my back screamed. I'd been driving for 13 hours with only gas station coffee and adrenaline keeping me conscious. But I was close now. So close. 1 hour. Just one more hour until I'd hold my grandson. Then I saw it, the green highway sign glowing in my headlights. Denver city limit 47 miles. My heart beat faster with every passing mile marker. 45 miles. 40. 37. The city lights appeared on the horizon, a golden sprawl against the pre-dawn sky. I had no idea that in exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes, my son would block me at a hospital door and speak words that would cost them everything. I had no idea the GPS glitches were a signal jammer tracking my location. I had no idea that the situation with the original grandson had already changed completely weeks prior. All I knew was that I was almost there, almost home. My son's face was the first thing I saw when I reached the maternity ward. Not relief, not joy, but pure panic. I'd walked through Denver Memorial's fluorescent hallways at 2 in the morning, following signs to the third-floor room, 314. 14 hours of driving had left my back screaming and my eyes burning, but adrenaline carried me forward. I was going to meet my grandson. Nothing else mattered. Then I saw Desmond standing outside the delivery room door, and everything stopped. His face was pale. His eyes darted past me into the room behind him, then back. Not the exhausted joy of a new father. Not the overwhelmed gratitude of a son whose dad had driven through the night to be there. Panic. Cold, calculated panic. "Dad," he said, and his voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" I stopped 3 feet from him. "Simone called me. She said the baby was coming. I drove straight through. He glanced back into the room again, and I followed his gaze. Simone sat upright in the hospital bed, fully awake, no epidural haze, no exhaustion. She was staring directly at Desmond. Her eyes locked with his for one long second, and something passed between them. A signal. A script. She gave the smallest nod. Desmond turned back to me and his expression hardened. "My wife doesn't like you," he said, flat and brutal. "Just leave." I felt the words like a punch. "What?" "She doesn't want you here," he said, louder now. "The doctor said stress could complicate the delivery. You have to go." "I drove 14 hours to see my grandson," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not asking to be in the delivery room just to be nearby when he arrives." "No." He stepped forward, blocking the doorway completely. "Dad, please. You're making this harder. Just go back to Phoenix." Behind him, Simone shifted in the bed. She didn't look stressed. She looked like an actress watching her scene partner hit his marks. I should have said something. pushed back, demanded an explanation. But 30 years as a detective had taught me when to retreat and regroup, when to observe instead of engage. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll go." Desmond's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I'll call you when things settle down." I nodded, turned, and walked back down that fluorescent hallway, my footsteps echoing against tile that smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. I didn't look back. I didn't let myself feel it yet. But I noted everything. The choreography, the eye contact, the precision of their coordination. I drove to the Hilton Garden Inn 3 miles from the hospital and checked in at 2:30 in the morning. The clerk, a kid barely 20 with tired eyes and a name tag that said Jeremy, handed me a key card without asking questions. The room was generic. Beige walls, polyester bedspread print of an aspen forest above the headboard. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. No calls, no texts, nothing. I had driven 14 hours through darkness and snow to be told I wasn't wanted at the single most important moment of my grandson's life. I should have been angry, hurt, devastated. Instead, I felt something else settling into place. Something colder. Something that had been dormant since retirement, but never truly gone. I replayed the scene. Desmond's panic. Simone's signal. The way they moved like a team executing a plan. People don't coordinate like that naturally. Not in moments of genuine emotion. That kind of precision requires rehearsal. But why? I checked my phone every 10 minutes. 2:30 became 3. 3 became 4. Dawn light crept through the heavy curtains, gray and weak. At 6, I tried to sleep. Couldn't. My mind kept circling back to that hallway, that door, that look between them. At 10 o'clock Wednesday morning, my phone finally rang. "Dad," Desmond said, and his voice sounded exhausted now, but there was something underneath it. Something that felt performed. "He's here. Finn Madden. 7 pounds 2 ounces. He's perfect. Finn. My grandson. The baby I'd been dreaming about for months, buying gifts for, in secret imagining holding for the first time. "Congratulations, son," I said, and I meant it despite everything. "When can I meet him?" A long pause. Too long. "Simone's really tired, Dad. The delivery was rough. Maybe give us a day or two to settle in." "A day or two." I kept my voice neutral. "I'm already in Denver. I can wait in the hall if you want privacy." "No," he said quickly. "She needs rest. No visitors. Doctor's orders." Doctor's orders. The same excuse from 6 hours ago, now repurposed. "Okay," I said. "Call me when you're ready." "I will," he promised, and hung up before I could say I loved him. I sat in that hotel room for another hour, staring at the phone screen until it went dark, and something in me went cold. Not angry, not hurt anymore, just cold, clear. The way I used to feel walking into an interrogation room with a suspect who thought they were smarter than me. Baby Finn, just hours old, lay in that hospital room while I stood excluded in the hallway my grandson used as a weapon I didn't yet understand. But I would understand. Because in 30 years of financial crimes work, I'd learned to read patterns, follow the money, track the inconsistencies. And my son and his wife had just shown me their first mistake. They thought excluding me was the plan. They didn't realize exclusion was information. I stood up from that hotel bed and walked to the bathroom. The mirror showed a 52-year-old man with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes from 3 decades of squinting at evidence boards and forged signatures. I wasn't just a rejected grandfather anymore. I was a detective, and criminals always expose their flaws when they think they've already won. I splashed cold water on my face, dried my hands on the scratchy hotel towel, and pulled out my notebook, the same kind I'd carried for 30 years, wire-bound and palm-sized. On the first page, I wrote 3 words: timeline, behavior, money. Then I sat down to wait, because whatever my son and his wife were hiding, they would make another mistake. They always do, and when they did, I would be watching. Friday morning, I drove back to Denver Memorial unannounced. The notebook sat on my passenger seat, 3 words written on the first page: timeline, behavior, money. Room 314 was empty sheets, stripped bassinet, gone, no trace that my grandson had ever existed there. I stood in the doorway, staring at the bare mattress. The antiseptic smell was the same, but the room where Finn had been born 3 days ago was now as impersonal as a hotel after checkout. A nurse walked past, noticed me standing there. The maternity ward nurse was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Taylor. "Can I help you?" "The Madden family," I said. "Room 314. When did they discharge?" She checked the computer at the nurse's station. "Thursday evening, around 7. "Thursday. Yesterday." They'd taken my grandson home without a word. I called Desmond. He answered on the 4th ring. "Dad, you took the baby home without even telling me." "Dad, Simone wanted to get home to her own space," he said, and I heard the script in his voice again. "She's been really anxious about germs and visitors." "I'm not a visitor, Desmond. I'm your father. I'm Finn's grandfather." A pause. Too long. Calculated. "I know," he said finally. "But the doctor said new mothers need time to bond without outside stress. She's asking for a month. Just a month to settle in, then you can visit. A month." They thought I would sit quietly for a month, while they did what exactly. "Okay," I said. "Call me when you're ready." I hung up before he could hear what I was thinking. This wasn't new mother anxiety. This was tactical isolation. I walked back to my car and started driving south. The return journey was nothing like the desperate overnight race 3 days ago. No excitement. No anticipation. Just 14 hours of cold, methodical dissection. I replayed every detail. Simone's sudden warmth after 3 years of calling me Mr. Madden. The perfectly timed phone call. Desmond's panic when I arrived. The eye contact between them, that silent coordination. The GPS glitches in Utah. I'd dismissed them as mountain interference, but what if someone had been tracking me? I stopped at a rest area in Utah, the same one I'd passed on the way up. Bought coffee from a vending machine and sat at a picnic table in the thin mountain air. 3 months ago, something had happened. Something I'd missed. Then it surfaced, the ceramic mug. Simone had sent it as a gift. A white mug with painted flowers and the words, "Family is forever," in blue script. She'd included a handwritten note, the first personal communication she'd ever sent me. "Leland," it had said. "I'm working on a family art project for the baby's nursery. Would you press your handprint into this clay and send it back? I want Finn to grow up surrounded by the people who love him." I'd been so moved I'd nearly cried. I'd pressed my palm into the wet clay, careful to get a clear print. Then my thumb, because she'd asked for thumbprints specifically. "For the tree branches," her note had explained. I'd shipped it back to Denver the next day. Now sitting at that rest stop with cold coffee and colder clarity, I thought, why did she need my fingerprint? In 30 years of financial crimes work, I'd seen biometric fraud 100 times. Fingerprints lifted from clay molds used to unlock phones, sign documents, authorize transfers. That ceramic mug was still sitting on my kitchen counter when I walked through my front door Saturday evening. She'd sent it back a month later, fired and glazed. I'd put it next to my coffee maker and thought about my grandson every morning. I'd never thought about what Simone had done with the clay mold. My neighbor, Rosa Madrigal, 62, a retired elementary school teacher with silver hair and a garden full of roses, waved from her yard as I pulled into the driveway. "How's the new grandbaby Leland?" she called. I forced a smile. "Beautiful. Just beautiful." "When do we get to see pictures?" "Soon," I said, and carried my bag inside before she could ask anything else. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Claire's book on the coffee table. The mug on the counter, painted handprints arranged in a tree. I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled out my notebook. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote questions. Then I started numbering lines, 1 through 7. First question, why did my daughter-in-law need my fingerprint? Second, why did the GPS glitch exactly when I was in a dead zone with no cell service? Third, why did Simone call me Leland for the first time the same night she invited me to Denver? Fourth, Why did they coordinate so precisely to exclude me from the hospital? Fifth, why discharge secretly without notification? Sixth, why exactly 1 month of isolation? Seventh, what are they doing with that month? I stared at the list. In 30 years of financial crimes work, I'd learned that when someone steals your biometrics, they're planning to steal a lot more. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, checked my accounts, savings, checking, retirement. Everything looked normal. But I knew better than to stop there, because whatever Desmond and Simone were planning, they hadn't needed me in Denver to do it. They'd needed me away from Phoenix, out of cell range, unreachable. 4 days ago, while I was driving through Utah with no signal, something had happened. I just didn't know what yet. The phone call came Sunday afternoon while I was staring at those 7 questions, and the woman's voice was professional, almost apologetic. Mr. Madden, this is Linda Kaufman from Denver Memorial's billing department. We're calling about an $8,500 billing issue with a signature that appears to be yours, except our timestamp says you were impossible to reach when it was submitted. Linda Kaufman spoke with the careful professionalism of someone delivering bad news to strangers every day. I could hear keyboard clicks in the background, the hum of a busy office. What kind of billing issue? I asked. Your grandson's delivery. The insurance claim was denied due to a pre-existing condition exclusion, so the full hospital bill defaulted to the financial guarantor, that's you, according to the forms. But our records show the forms were submitted electronically on May 15th at 11:47 p.m. Can you confirm you signed these documents? May 15th, the night I drove to Denver. I pulled up my phone's location history. What time exactly? I asked. 23:47, she said. I looked at my phone screen. May 15th, 2023, 4:11. My location pin showed me in the middle of nowhere, Utah, 8 hours into the drive, white-knuckling through a snowstorm on I-70 with 0 cell reception. At that exact minute, I said slowly, I was in a dead zone in Utah with no phone signal. I couldn't have signed anything electronically. A pause. The keyboard clicking stopped. I see, she said. Mr. Madden, I'm going to need to escalate this to our fraud investigation team. Can you hold? No, I said. Email me those documents immediately. I want to see exactly what was submitted and how. She gave me her direct email. 20 minutes later, the documents arrived. I opened the PDF on my laptop. There was my signature, perfect, identical to the one I'd pressed into that ceramic mug 3 months ago. Digital scan, clean edges, no tremor. Fingerprint authentication confirmed at 23:47:33. I scrolled down to the security log. Form submitted from EIP address 198.51.100.42. Hospital lobby guest Wi-Fi. Timestamp 23:47:33. Then I saw the attachment Linda had included. Security camera screenshot. Black and white, grainy but clear enough. Simone sitting at a public computer terminal in the Denver Memorial lobby. Timestamp 23:52. 5 minutes after the forms went through. 3 minutes before she'd called my phone asking if I was driving safely. I looked at the timestamp 23:47. I looked at the photo of Simone at the keyboard. 23:52. While I was thinking about holding my grandson for the first time, she was thinking about fraud. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. Elaine Sinclair answered on the second ring. She was 41, a senior investigator with the FBI's white-collar crimes division in Phoenix, and we'd worked 3 major fraud cases together before I retired. Leland, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Been a while. What's going on? I need a background check, I said, fast and quiet. The smile disappeared from her voice. Talk to me. I gave her the details. Simone's full name, date of birth, last known address in Denver. The forged signature. The timestamp. The security footage. I'll call you back in 2 hours, she said. She called back in 90 minutes. Leland, you sitting down. I was in my home office now, the one I'd converted from a spare bedroom when I retired. Monitors, dark filing cabinets full of old case notes I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I'm sitting. Your daughter-in-law has a record, Elaine said. Minor identity theft, 2019. Changed her name twice, once legally, once not. Real name is Simone Patterson, used Simone Whitfield for 3 years before marrying your son. I wrote it down. Simone Patterson, Whitfield, Madden, 3 identities. But here's the bigger problem, Elaine continued, and her voice went flat. Professional flat. The tone she used when delivering evidence that would destroy someone's life. Your son's bank records show a $340,000 international gambling debt. Due date November 30th, 2023. I stopped writing. How long has he had this debt? I asked. At least 8 months, she said. Leland, this wasn't opportunistic. This was planned from the day she announced the pregnancy. I sat very still. You still there? Elaine asked. Yeah. Listen, she said quietly. I know what you're thinking, but your son wasn't tricked. These bank records show coordination. Joint accounts opened, funds moved, timing too perfect. He's not a victim here, Leland. He's an accomplice. I looked at the photo on my desk. Desmond at 8 years old holding up a fish we'd caught together. Smiling. Proud. My son. The son who'd just tried to steal from me. Send me everything, I said. Already in your email, she said. Leland, I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. I need the truth, not sympathy. I hung up and opened the files she'd sent. Bank statements. Transaction histories. Dates and amounts painting a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't look away from. March 12th, joint account opened. Simone Patterson Madden and Desmond Madden. March 15th. The ceramic mug shipped to me. April 3rd, international wire transfer $12,000 to an offshore account. April 18th, another wire $8,500. May 12th. Phone call to me. Simone's sweet invitation to Denver. May 15th, 2347. Hospital forms submitted with my stolen signature. That $8,500 hospital bill was just the testing ground. By exploiting that biometric authentication, they accessed my identity security keys to breach my primary retirement accounts. May 16th, 200 Desmond, blocking me in the hospital hallway, while the main transfers of $847,000 began to process. Every move calculated, every word rehearsed, every moment of warmth a transaction. I sat alone in the dark. My son wasn't a victim. My son was the architect. The grief hit me then. Not anger, not betrayal, just profound, bone-deep grief for the boy in that fishing photo who'd somehow become this. I let myself feel it for exactly 10 minutes. Sat in the darkness of my office, surrounded by case files from 3 decades of hunting people who lied and stole and destroyed families. People exactly like my son. Then I turned the lights back on, because with a $340,000 debt due November 30th, an $8,500 hospital fraud was just the opening move. They had 6 months to cover that debt, and they'd already shown me how they planned to do it. My fingerprint, my signature, my identity. I pulled out my old case notebook and opened to a fresh page. At the top I wrote counter-operation. They had no idea I'd spent 30 years hunting people exactly like them. By 11 o'clock Sunday night, I had a list of 7 calls to make. In 30 years of law enforcement, I'd learned that the quality of your network determines whether you hunt alone or with a pack. I started with Elaine. I need federal jurisdiction, I said when she answered. Full white-collar case file. Already opened it an hour ago, she said. Leland, if your son and his wife are running a coordinated fraud scheme, you need FBI resources behind you. I've got authorization to monitor their accounts, track communications, coordinate with local PD. What else do you need? Denver surveillance, I said. She didn't hesitate. I'll make calls. Second call, Noel Harrington. Detective Noel Harrington, 50 years old, from Denver PD's Fraud Division. We'd worked a multi-state identity theft ring together 3 years back, and good cops remember who had their back. He answered on the second ring. Leland, it's been a while. I need a favor, I said. Background monitoring and surveillance in Denver. Targets are my son and daughter-in-law. A pause. Not judgment. Processing. Your son, he said. Yeah, you wouldn't ask if you weren't sure, he said. Send me what you have. I'll run surveillance and background checks from my end. Third call, Ray Carson, one of my former Phoenix PD partners who'd retired 2 years before me. He picked up on the first ring and agreed to be on standby without asking a single question. Fourth call, Julie Hammond, who'd worked financial crimes with me for 8 years before taking early retirement. She told me she'd clear her calendar starting Tuesday. Fifth call, Vincent Cross, my old surveillance specialist. He simply said, text me the address and I'm there. 3 retired detectives, all within 10 minutes, all immediate yes. Sixth call, Alan Pritchard, the senior security specialist at my bank. It was almost midnight, but Alan kept his phone on for exactly this kind of situation. Leland, he said, what's wrong? I need the AI audio frequency system active on my accounts, I said. Any voice spoofing attempt, I want it flagged and geolocated instantly. The system you helped us build in 2018, he asked. That's the one. I can have it monitoring your accounts by tomorrow morning, he said. What are we looking for? Voice cloning, deep fake audio, anything that sounds like me but isn't me. I heard keyboard clicks. Done. System goes live at 6 a.m. Anything else? Send me real-time alerts. Every transaction, every authentication attempt, every login. You got it. How many criminals had I caught over 30 years because they underestimated a cop's network? Seventh call, my wife Claire. She deserved to know. She answered groggily. Leland, it's midnight. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. But I need to tell you something about Desmond. I told her everything. The forged signature, the stolen fingerprint, the gambling debt, the coordination between him and Simone, the fact that our son was actively stealing from us. She was quiet for a long time. Our son, she said finally. Yeah, what are you going to do? Stop him, I said. Document everything. Build a case. Let him walk into a trap of his own making. Another long pause. Do what you have to do, she said, and her voice cracked. But Leland, when this is over, we're going to have to grieve. For the son we thought we had. I know, I said. When I hung up, I sat for a moment in the silence of my home office. The monitors were dark. The filing cabinets full of old cases cast long shadows in the desk lamp's glow. Then I opened my laptop and started building the documentation system. First screenshots of every text message Simone had sent. The warm invitation to Denver. The follow-up messages asking about my drive. The concern that felt genuine at the time but now looked like tracking. Second, GPS timestamps from my phone. May 15th, 23:47, my exact location in the Utah dead zone when the hospital forms were submitted. Third hotel receipt from the Hilton Garden Inn. Check-in time 2:30 a.m. May 16th. Proof I'd driven through the night. Fourth gas station purchases. Flagstaff, Arizona. Green River, Utah. Eagle, Colorado. Every stop time-stamped and geotagged. Fifth call logs showing Simone intercepting Desmond's phone. Twice on the drive up. Once after I checked into the hotel. Sixth, the email from Linda Kaufman with the forged hospital bill and security camera footage of Simone at the lobby computer. Seventh, bank statements showing the ceramic mug purchase from March the shipment, tracking the timeline, proving she'd captured my fingerprint 3 months before using it. I backed everything up to 3 separate cloud storage accounts. Encrypted, time-stamped, chain of custody preserved. At 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Elaine. Denver PD coordinated. Harrington has surveillance authorization. FBI forensic accounting starts tomorrow. At 1:30 a.m. text from Alan. System test complete. Audio frequency scanner is operational. You're protected. At 2 a.m. text from Noel. Background check running. Will have preliminary report by noon. The infrastructure was coming together. Federal coordination, local surveillance, retired colleagues on standby. Bank security armed with technology I'd helped build 5 years ago, technology specifically designed to catch voice-spoofing fraud. Simone had no idea that the AI system scanning for fake audio signatures was something I'd personally consulted on. That I knew exactly how it worked, exactly what it could catch, exactly how sensitive it was. She'd built her fraud around my stolen biometrics. I'd built the defense system before she ever thought to attack. I brewed my 4th cup of coffee and watched the sky lighten through my office window. Somewhere in Denver, my son and his wife were sleeping, thinking they'd won. Thinking I was just a grandfather who'd driven 14 hours out of love and exhaustion. They didn't know about the network, the coordination, the federal case file that now existed with both their names on it. At 3 a.m. Monday morning, I sat back and looked at the monitors glowing in my home office. FBI coordination active, Denver surveillance running, 3 retired detectives on standby, bank AI system armed, every piece of evidence documented, backed up, and secured. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to walk into it. I didn't have to wait long. Elaine's call came at 7 o'clock Monday morning, and the first thing she said was, "Leland, sit down. What your son and his wife built against you is the most sophisticated fraud infrastructure I've seen outside of organized crime." I was already sitting at my desk, coffee cold in the mug beside me, monitors still glowing from the all-night documentation session. "Talk to me," I said. "FBI Tech Forensics finished the deep dive," she said, and I could hear papers rustling. They deployed 8 distinct attack layers. This wasn't opportunistic, Leland. This was architecture. 8 layers. I repeated, pulling up a blank document to take notes. First, GPS signal jammer. That's what caused your glitches in Utah. They were tracking you in real time, making sure you were out of cell range when they needed you to be. The snowstorm. The dead zones. The moments I'd dismissed as mountain interference. Second, desktop spyware on your home computer. Keylogger screen capture the works. They've been monitoring everything you type for at least 3 months. I looked at my laptop. Every email I'd sent, every bank login, every search. Third, mobile tracking on your phone. They knew where you were at all times. Fourth, she continued, 3 synthetic identity accounts, using variations of your middle name with forged credentials. Thomas Madden T. Madden, Thomas L. Madden, all opened in different states. Fifth, spoofed voicemail system. Any message you thought you left them, they could intercept, delete, or replace. I thought about the calls where Simone answered Desmond's phone. The messages I'd left that he claimed he never received. Sixth, stealth crypto wallet for fund transfers. Makes tracking nearly impossible without federal subpoenas. Seventh, biometric theft device. We're still analyzing the ceramic mug you mentioned, but the clay composition matches commercial-grade biometric capture materials. Eighth, voice cloning software. They haven't deployed it yet, but the FBI found installation files on Simone's laptop. They were preparing to fake your voice for bank authorization calls. 8 layers. Military-grade fraud infrastructure deployed against their own family. How much have they already taken? I asked. $23,000 over the past 2 months, flowing through intermediaries and ghost accounts. But Leland, she paused. The timeline is what kills me. FBI Tech Forensics tracked the first synthetic account opening to 8 months ago, September 2022. September 2022. I pulled up my calendar and counted backward. The exact week they announced the pregnancy, I said. They're planning to hurt him, I said. Not necessarily, Elaine said quickly. Could be medical fraud. Fake a condition, fake a death certificate, collect the payout. I thanked Elaine and hung up. Sat at my desk, staring at the notes I'd taken. 8 attack layers. Timeline starting with the pregnancy announcement. A grandson I'd been excited about for 8 months, who was really just the bait in an elaborate trap. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The ceramic mug sat on the counter next to the coffee maker, exactly where I'd kept it for 3 months. White ceramic with hand-painted flowers. Blue script reading, "Family is forever." I picked it up and turned it over. The bottom showed my thumbprint, pressed into the clay, fired and glazed, permanently preserved. Clear ridges, perfect definition. The kind of biometric scan that could unlock a hospital electronic signature portal at 23:47 while I was driving through a Utah snowstorm. I closed my eyes and let the memory surface. February 2023. 3 months ago. I'd driven to Denver for what I thought was a reconciliation visit. Desmond had called, said Simone wanted to make amends, wanted me to be part of the baby's life. I'd arrived hopeful. Simone had been warm. Genuinely warm, or so I'd thought. She'd made dinner, asked about my retirement, laughed at my stories about old cases. Then she'd brought out the ceramic mug. "I'm working on a family art project," she'd said, setting the wet clay mold on the table between us. 3 generations. I want Finn to grow up surrounded by the people who love him. She'd handed me the mold. "Press your thumb right here, Leland. 3 generations in one piece of art. I thought it would mean something to you." I'd looked at Desmond. He'd smiled, nodded. "It does," I'd said, and my voice had cracked. "After 3 years, this means everything." I'd pressed my thumb into the wet clay, careful to make it clear. Deep, perfect. I was crying when I did it. Actual tears. Because I thought my daughter-in-law was finally accepting me. That I was finally going to be part of my grandson's life. Simone had smiled and taken the mold back. "I'll fire it and send it to you when it's done," she'd said. "So you can think about Finn every morning." And I had. Every morning for 3 months, I'd looked at that mug while drinking my coffee and thought about my grandson. Now I understood. She wasn't thinking about art. She was thinking about timestamp 2347, about hospital authentication portals, about the exact pressure and angle needed to forge an electronic signature. The ceramic mug sat on my counter for 3 months, a beautiful lie I looked at every morning while drinking coffee. Evidence item 1. Biometric theft device disguised as sentimental gift. February 2023. Used to forge hospital signature. May 15, 2023, 23:47. I set the evidence bag on my desk next to Elaine's technical report. 8 layers of attack. $23,000 already stolen. A ceramic mug that weaponized my tears. And I had to ask myself if they exploited even the moments I felt loved. What else did I miss? I stared at my thumbprint through the clear plastic of the evidence bag. Perfect. Permanent. Captured in a moment of genuine emotion and used as a weapon. The answer would come 4 days later in a phone call that would make $23,000 look like pocket change. The phone call came Wednesday morning, 4 days after the birth, and my son's voice was screaming, except the scream had a frequency signature I'd last heard in a phone extortion case I closed in 2014. I was in the kitchen pouring my second coffee when my phone lit up. Desmond's name on the caller ID. I answered. "What the hell did you do?" The voice was his, but wrong. Too compressed. Too clean. "My cards are frozen. The account's locked. This is your fault. You called the bank, didn't you?" I stood very still and listened. The rage was perfect. The tone, the inflection, the way his voice cracked on the word fault. But underneath it, barely audible, was something else. A digital artifact. A filter signature. I'd heard it before, 2014. The Hernandez phone scam. Extortion calls targeting elderly victims with deepfake audio of their grandchildren crying for help. We'd traced the calls to a voice cloning operation in Nevada. I'd personally broken down the audio forensics, identified the exact digital filter they were using. This was the same filter. My son wasn't on the phone. This was a recording. I kept listening. The tirade continued. Accusations about me freezing his accounts, interfering with his life, ruining everything. The words got more desperate, more panicked. Then the recording ended. Just stopped mid-sentence. Dead air. I waited 5 seconds. Nothing. Nice playback quality, son, I said into the silence. But next time use a newer filter. I cracked this one a decade ago. I hung up. My son couldn't even fake a phone call to my face. He'd recorded his rage and pressed play. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. Added a new line to the evidence log. Evidence item 7, deepfake audio threat. Wednesday, May 24th, 9:47 a.m. Filter signature matches 2014 Hernandez case. Pre-recorded, not live conversation. Demonstrates premeditation and technical sophistication. My phone buzzed. Text from Elaine. Need to talk. Call me when you can. I called her back immediately. What have you got? I asked. Leland, she said, and her voice had that flat professional tone again. The one that meant she was about to tell me something that would hurt. We found something worse. I walked to my office and sat down at my desk. Go ahead. Life insurance policy on baby Finn, she said. $500,000. Taken out 3 days ago, May 21st. Primary beneficiary is an alias registered to Conrad Dalton. The name meant nothing to me. Who's Conrad Dalton? I asked. International loan shark, Elaine said. Operates out of the Cayman Islands, specializes in high-stakes gambling debt collection. Your son's $340,000 debt that's owed to Dalton. And according to the insurance documents we subpoenaed, this was a joint agreement. All 3 of them signed off, Desmond, Simone, and Dalton. I stared at my computer screen. My grandson is the collateral, I said. Yeah, Elaine said quietly. They turned that baby into a debt instrument before he was even a week old. This wasn't about protecting Finn Leland. This was about using his profile for cash, which is why we're treating this as an active threat. I'm coordinating with Denver PD to establish wellness checks on the baby. Unannounced visits, documentation of his condition. We need proof he's alive and safe. I pulled up the email she'd sent, scanned the insurance documents, policy number, payout amount, beneficiary information. Finn Madden, age 4 days, $500,000. Beneficiary Conrad Dalton. My 4-day-old grandson reduced to a line item on a debt collection spreadsheet. How long have they been planning this? I asked. The insurance application was filed 2 weeks before the birth, Elaine said. May 1st, while Simone was still pregnant. They were setting this up before he was born. May 1st. 2 weeks before, Simone called me with that warm voice and invited me to Denver. 2 weeks before they sent me driving through a snowstorm to be blocked at a hospital door. They'd been planning to monetize my grandson before he drew his first breath. What's the timeline on collection? I asked. Standard policy waiting period is 6 months, she said. November 21st. That's when they can claim without triggering an automatic fraud investigation. November 21st, just 9 days before Desmond's gambling debt was due on November 30th. The math was perfect. The timing was perfect. My grandson's insurance payout would clear the debt with 9 days to spare. Leland, Elaine said. This changes everything. We're not just dealing with identity theft and fraud anymore. This is conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, child endangerment, and potentially worse. FBI's opening a full criminal investigation with child protection protocols. Good, I said. We'll need Denver PD to do a physical wellness check on Finn within the next 24 hours, she said. Make sure he's actually alive and safe. Can you handle that? I'll call Noel, I said. When I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office and looked at the evidence spread across my desk. The ceramic mug in its evidence bag, the FBI technical report on 8 attack layers, the forged hospital bill, the deepfake audio recording, and now a life insurance policy turning my 4-day-old grandson into debt collateral. My grandson wasn't a child they loved. He was a blank check they planned to cash, and I was not going to let that stand. The first step was documenting everything, building a case that would protect Finn and expose the full scope of the fraud. I spent Thursday night cross-referencing timelines, backing up evidence to encrypted servers, preparing the foundation for what had to come next. Then Friday morning, the bank called with a question that sounded almost apologetic. "Mr. Madden, this is Sharon Ellis from Fraud Detection. Did you open 3 accounts in March using your middle name and a Utah billing address?" Sharon Ellis, from the bank's Fraud Detection Unit, delivered the news with the careful precision of someone who'd seen too many victims learn they'd been robbed. "No," I said, already pulling up my banking app. "What accounts?" "3 checking account," she said, and I could hear keyboard clicks. "All opened March 12th, 2023. They use variations of your middle name, Thomas Madden T. Madden, Thomas L. Madden. Different institutions, but the synthetic IDs are sophisticated enough they bypassed our automated fraud detection systems." "For how long?" I asked. 2 months, she said. "They've been active since March. We only caught them because your recent fraud alert triggered a manual review across affiliated banks." 2 months. March through May. The exact window when Simone sent me the ceramic mug, when they announced Finn's due date, when they lured me to Denver. "How much went through them?" I asked. "Funds totaling $23,000, she said. "Transferred in small increments to avoid triggering automatic flags. The receiving accounts are intermediaries we've flagged as part of an international loan network. Conrad Dalton's network. The same loan shark who was listed as Finn's insurance beneficiary." "What else can you tell me about synthetic IDs?" I asked. "They're professional grade," she said. "Utah addresses matching the time frame when you were traveling through that state, Arizona driver's license numbers, with single-digit alterations, manufactured credit histories pulled from stolen identity templates. Whoever built these knew exactly what they were doing." I thought about Simone's background. Identity theft, 2019. Name changes. This wasn't her first time. "I need copies of all the account opening documents," I said. "Every form, every signature, every piece of identification they used." "Already flagged for the FBI, she said. "They'll have them by end of day." $23,000. 2 months of systematic theft. How many times had I walked past that ceramic mug while they were draining my accounts? I thanked Sharon and hung up. Added another line to my evidence log. Evidence item 8. 3 synthetic identity accounts. March to May 2023. Professional grade fraud infrastructure. $23,000 transferred to Conrad Dalton intermediaries. My phone rang again 30 minutes later. "Elaine, we recovered something from Simone's cloud backup," she said, no preamble. "Encrypted files. Took our tech team most of the night to crack." "What kind of files?" I asked. "Her exit strategy," Elaine said. "Leland, she has a complete victim cover identity pre-staged and ready to deploy." I sat very still. "Explain." "Fabricated text message chains going back 6 months, she said. Screenshots showing Desmond as psychologically abusive, coercive, controlling. Doctored photographs suggesting threats and intimidation. A manufactured timeline of escalating abuse that positions her as a domestic violence victim forced into fraud under duress. "She's planning to frame Desmond," I said. "If they get caught, scenario B activates automatically," Elaine said. "She claims coercion presents this fabricated evidence and cooperates with prosecutors. Your son goes to federal prison alone. She walks away clean, possibly with immunity." I pulled up the encrypted files she'd sent. Scrolled through them. Text messages that never happened. Timestamps are perfectly aligned with real events, but dialogue is completely manufactured. Desmond saying things he never said, threatening things, violent things. Photographs of Simone with careful bruising makeup, I realized. Professional stage makeup creating injuries that never existed. Dated, documented, backed up across multiple cloud services, a journal handwritten entries in Simone's precise script. "He said if I don't help him, he'll hurt the baby. I have no choice, I'm so scared." All fake, all pre-planned, all designed to turn my son into evidence against himself. "When did she create these?" I asked. File metadata shows the earliest entries date to February, Elaine said. Before the ceramic mug, before the hospital fraud. She built this exit strategy before they even started executing the main fraud. February. She'd been planning to betray Desmond from the very beginning. Does he know, I asked, about scenario B? No way, Elaine said. This is insurance she kept completely private. If your son had any idea, she'd already positioned him as the sole defendant he'd run. Or he'd testify against her, I said. Exactly, Elaine said. Which is why she can't let him know until it's too late. Until they're both in custody and she's already activated the victim narrative with prosecutors. I thought about Desmond, about the deep-fake phone call, about him screaming accusations through pre-recorded audio because he couldn't face me in real time. My son was weak, desperate, drowning in debt and making catastrophic choices. But Simone was calculating, ruthless, building escape plans that turned her accomplice into her scapegoat. She built an escape plan that turned my son into evidence against himself. There's more, Elaine said quietly. The victim's cover identity includes testimony specifically about you. Me. Yeah. In her narrative, Desmond forced her to target you because you're wealthy and elderly. She claims she tried to protect you, tried to warn you, but he threatened her into compliance. Wealthy and elderly. I was 52 and living on a detective's pension. She's positioning herself as everyone's victim, I said. Mine Desmond's the systems. And it's sophisticated enough it might work, Elaine said. Prosecutors see this kind of coerced spouse defense all the time. If she presents this evidence early, cooperates fully, she could walk with minimal charges while your son does 20 years federal. I closed the encrypted files and sat back in my chair. My son thought he'd married an ally, a partner who would help him clear the gambling debt and start fresh. Someone who loved him enough to commit crimes beside him. He had no idea that in Simone's carefully constructed scenario B, he was the sacrificial pawn. The truly dangerous one wasn't my son. It was the woman he married. Understanding Simone was the true threat changed everything. She wasn't just my son's accomplice, she was the architect, and Desmond was her insurance policy. Saturday morning, my phone rang. Kevin Roth's voice was urgent in the way only an IT security specialist's voice gets when they find something they weren't supposed to. Leland, don't touch your computer. We've got a problem. Kevin Roth, an IT security specialist I'd worked with on a cybercrime task force 5 years back, had the kind of technical paranoia that made him perfect for finding things people wanted hidden. I'd asked him to run a security scan on my system as a favor. What kind of problem? I asked. Military-grade spyware, he said. Installed approximately 3 weeks ago. Keylogger screen capture browser monitoring the works. Whoever put this here has been watching everything you do. 3 weeks ago, early May, I closed my eyes and let the memory surface. Simone's last Phoenix visit. The week before Finn's birth. She'd driven down alone, said she wanted to check on me, make sure I was okay, before everything got crazy with the baby. She'd been sweet, concerned. We sat in the living room talking for an hour. Then she went into the kitchen to make tea, 15 minutes. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Can you remove it? I asked. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Yeah, but Leland, this logs every keystroke, every search, every document you open. If someone's been watching for 3 weeks, they know everything. Every FBI call, every bank coordination, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every network contact I'd activated. Simone had been watching my entire investigation unfold in real time. She'd been watching me build the case against her for 2 solid weeks. Had she been laughing, or had she been getting nervous? Kevin, I said slowly, don't remove it. What? If she's watching, I want her to keep watching, I said. I'm going to show her exactly what I want her to see. A pause. Then Kevin laughed. You're going to use it as bait. Yeah, I said. Can you help me make sure she believes what she's seeing? Absolutely, he said. What do you need? I spent Saturday afternoon on the phone with Elaine Allen Pritchard and Kevin, building the trap. The concept was simple, create something Simone couldn't resist. something valuable enough to pull them out of Denver and into my territory, something that would make them think they'd won. A fake inheritance. Elaine helped me fabricate the documentation. A former police partner who'd passed away 6 months ago, real person, real death, but no actual inheritance. We created attorney letters on official letterhead, bank statements showing a probate account, transfer documents ready for signature. $75,000. Enough to make a dent in that gambling debt. Enough to look like salvation. Alan set up the bait account at the bank. Any attempt to access it would be flagged, geolocated, and recorded. Real-time alerts to the FBI. Kevin helped me position everything perfectly. I left a printed check on my desk, clearly visible in my webcam frame. Opened the fabricated attorney emails where the spyware could log them. Made phone calls discussing the inheritance while sitting at my monitored computer. Sunday morning, I installed hidden wireless cameras in my living room and kitchen. Cloud backup. Automatic recording. The FBI would have access to every angle. Then Sunday evening, I opened my browser, typed slowly, deliberately. Phoenix Real Estate Inheritance Info, $75,000. Contact legal counsel. In Denver, I knew 2 pairs of eyes were reading those exact words. I waited 30 minutes. Long enough for them to see it. Long enough for them to discuss it. Long enough for Simone to tell Desmond exactly what to say. Then I called my son. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad." "Desmond," I said, keeping my voice warm, grandfatherly. "I have some excellent financial news to share. An inheritance from an old partner came through. $75,000. I know things have been tight with the new baby, and I'd love to discuss it with you and Simone. Maybe we could set something up for Finn's future." Silence. Not the immediate response I'd expect from someone who'd just heard about unexpected money. Not the natural reaction of a son hearing his father offer financial help. 3 full seconds of silence. Enough time to glance at someone across the room. Enough time for that someone to nod. Enough time for them to activate whatever script they'd prepared. When Desmond spoke again, the shift was instant. "Dad, that's wonderful news," he said, "and the sweetness could give you whiplash. You know what Simone says, she's feeling much better. The recovery's been faster than expected. We could drive down next Saturday morning if that works for you. Bring Finn so you can finally meet him properly." Finally, I met him. As if they hadn't blocked me at the hospital door. As if they hadn't banned me for a month. "That would be perfect," I said. "I'd love to see my grandson." "Great," Desmond said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, the relief, the greed. "We'll leave early, probably be there by 10:30. I'll text you when we're close." "I'll make breakfast," I said. "Coffee, pancakes. We can talk about the inheritance and how to handle the paperwork." "Sounds perfect, Dad," he said. "Really? Thank you." I hung up and sat very still. In 3 weeks, Simone had watched me coordinate with the FBI. Watched me activate my law enforcement network. Watched me gather evidence against them. And she'd decided the best response was to drive straight into my trap, because she thought she was smarter. Though she was always 3 steps ahead. Thought that knowing what I was planning meant she could counter it. She didn't realize that everything she'd seen was exactly what I wanted her to see. The fake inheritance. The careless check on my desk. The browser searches she could monitor. All bait. I texted Elaine. They took it. Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Her response came 30 seconds later. "FBI will be in position by 9 o'clock. Hidden surveillance, geo-tracking, audio monitoring. We'll have everything." I looked at the hidden camera in my living room. The spyware on my computer. The bait check on my desk. The trap was set, baited, and ready. All I had to do was wait for them to walk through my front door. Saturday morning, I made coffee and waited. The hidden cameras were active. FBI surveillance was in position 2 houses down. Alan had confirmed the bait account was armed. Everything was ready. Through my living room window, I watched my son's Honda Accord pull into the driveway at exactly 10:30 a.m. And for one suspended moment before the doors opened, I was just a grandfather waiting to meet his grandson, not a detective setting a trap for his own family. Then the moment passed. Desmond got out first. Thinner than I remembered. Pale. Dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping. He opened the back door and carefully lifted out a car seat carrier. Simone emerged from the passenger side. She looked recovered, refreshed. Her eyes scanned my house with the same calculating assessment I'd seen 100 times in suspects evaluating a target. I opened my front door before they reached it. "You made it," I said, smiling. Come in, come in." Desmond carried the car seat inside, set it gently on my coffee table. And there he was. "Finn, can I?" asked. Desmond nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. I lifted Finn carefully from the carrier. He stirred, made a small sound, then settled against my chest. Warm. Solid. Real. "He's beautiful," I said, and my voice cracked despite everything. "He looks just like you did, Desmond. Exactly like you." For a moment, just a moment, I saw something like pain cross my son's face. Then Simone touched his arm and the expression vanished. "We brought pictures," she said brightly. "From the hospital. I know we were so overwhelmed those first few days, but we've been documenting everything now." I held Finn and played the role. Excited grandfather, oohing over baby photos, making coffee, offering breakfast. But I was also observing. Simone moved through my house with purpose disguised as casual interest. She looked at the family photos on the wall, commented on the furniture, asked about the neighborhood. But her eyes were calculating. Assessment, asset valuation. Desmond barely spoke, sat on my couch with his coffee untouched, staring at his phone. Finn stirred in my arms, opened his eyes, clear, innocent Desmond's eyes from 30 years ago, and looked up at me. I understood in that moment that whatever I was about to do, I was doing it for him. "He's so alert," I said. "How's he been sleeping?" "Terrible," Simone said with a practiced laugh. "Up every 2 hours. But that's just how babies are, right? Small talk. Performance. The choreography of a normal family visit." 45 minutes in, I saw Simone glance at the hallway leading to my home office. The office where I'd deliberately left the inheritance paperwork visible on my desk. "Would you mind if I used your restroom?" she asked. "Down the hall, second door on the left," I said. She disappeared. Was gone for 3 minutes. When she came back, her expression was carefully neutral, but I saw the shift in her eyes. She'd seen the documents. 10 minutes later, she took the bait. "Leland," she said, settling onto the couch beside Desmond. "Desmond mentioned something about inheritance that's so generous of you to think about Finn's future." I looked up from where I was gently rocking Finn. Well, it was unexpected. An old partner from the force passed away last year, and apparently he left me a portion of his estate. $75,000. "That's incredible," Simone said, and her voice had that same sweetness from the phone call that had lured me to Denver. "What are you planning to do with it?" "I'm not sure yet," I said. "I was thinking about Finn, maybe setting something up for his education, or helping you two with a larger expense. You might be planning house down payment, something like that." Simone leaned forward. "That would be amazing. We've been talking about getting out of the apartment, finding something with a yard for when Finn starts walking. We'd need to set up the trust properly," I said, watching her carefully. "The lawyers handling the estate want financial documentation from any beneficiaries. Tax purposes, you know how it is." "Of course," Simone said quickly. Too quickly. "Whatever you need. We can get you bank statements, tax returns, whatever the lawyers require." Desmond was staring at his coffee, silent. I held Finn a little closer. They stayed for another hour. Simone asked about the inheritance process twice more. Desmond took exactly 2 photos with his phone and spent the rest of the time looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. When they finally left, Simone gave me a warm hug. Desmond managed a weak handshake. "We'll call you next week about those documents," Simone said from the driveway. "Thank you so much for thinking of Finn's future." I waved as they drove away. Then I went inside, locked the door, and pulled out my laptop. The hidden camera footage played back in perfect high definition. Simone in my hallway slipping into my office for 30 seconds, photographing the inheritance documents with her phone. Desmond on the couch sending a text message, she's buying it. And there, when I'd stepped into the kitchen to pour water, the muffled sound of a high five and Simone's whispered laugh, easy money. I watched the footage 3 times. Then I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo Simone had taken before they left. Me holding Finn. His tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb. My grandson looking up at me with complete trust. I stared at that photo for a long time. Every word they'd spoken was recorded. Every glance, every whispered conspiracy. Already uploaded to FBI servers. Already being analyzed and cataloged as evidence. But none of that changed what I felt when I looked at Finn's face. I held his tiny hand tight in that picture. And I knew no matter what happened next, no matter how the trap closed or what it cost, I would protect this child. The moment their car turned the corner, I locked the front door and pulled the bracelet from my pocket. The hidden cameras had recorded everything I needed, Simone's whispered laugh. The high five in the kitchen doorway, 30 seconds in my office, photographing inheritance documents she believed were real. FBI servers already had the footage. The trap had closed exactly as planned. But the bracelet was something else. I set it on my kitchen table under the overhead light and studied it the way I'd once studied evidence at a crime scene methodically, without assumption, letting the object tell me what it was rather than what it appeared to be. It was supposed to be delicate infant jewelry, something light, decorative, safe for a baby to wear. I placed it on my kitchen scale, 0.7 ounces. Standard infant bracelets weighed less than 0.2. More than 3 times the normal weight for something meant to sit on a newborn's wrist. I turned it over. The casing was thicker than decorative silver had any reason to be. The clasp mechanism was more complex than a simple safety latch required. Nothing visually obvious, no exposed components, no blinking indicators, but the construction had the deliberate density of something built to conceal technology rather than display beauty. Nothing these people did was random. The ceramic mug hadn't been sentiment. The warm phone calls hadn't been reconciliation. And this bracelet hadn't been accidentally dropped on my couch cushion. It was planted, but why leave surveillance in my house after I'd already activated FBI coordination? After my own cameras were already recording every room, unless they didn't know about my cameras, unless they believed this bracelet was their intelligence operation while I'd been watching them the entire time. I called Elaine. "I need FBI tech forensics," I said when she answered. "They left something at my house. A baby bracelet. Wrong weight. Wrong construction. I think it's a device." "Bring it in tomorrow," she said. "We'll take it apart." I stood in my living room, the bracelet resting in my palm. Why was it so heavy? The baby bracelet sat on my desk in an evidence bag, its abnormal weight a question I couldn't yet answer. But I didn't have to wait long for other answers to start falling into place. Elaine's call came Saturday night at 9:47 p.m., and I knew, before she said a word, that the forensics had come back exactly as I'd predicted. The ceramic mug was the smoking gun. "FBI forensics confirmed at Leland," she said without preamble. "The fingerprint from that ceramic mug matches 100% with the biometric authentication token used at the hospital electronic portal. Timestamp, May 15, 2023, 47. I sat very still at my desk. The ceramic mug was 3 rooms away in its evidence bag, but I could picture it perfectly. The painted flowers, the blue script reading "Family is forever." My thumbprint is preserved in fired clay. 3 months, I said. She gave me that mug in February, 3 months before she used it to forge my signature. "This wasn't opportunistic, Leland," Elaine said. "This was infrastructure. She built that fraud mechanism months before deployment. Every sentimental moment was tactical. I thought about that February visit. Simone's warm smile. Her request to press my thumb into wet clay. The tears in my eyes because I thought she finally accepted me. While I was crying, she was planning a timestamp, 2347. What else did forensics find? I asked. The clay composition matches commercial-grade biometric capture materials, she said. The kind used by security companies for high-resolution fingerprint scanning. She didn't just press your thumb into art clay Leland. She used professional equipment disguised as a craft project. Professional equipment. Professional planning. Professional execution. We have enough for arrest warrants, Elaine continued. The forged hospital bill, the ceramic mug biometrics, the synthetic identity accounts, the insurance fraud on baby Finn. It's all documented. We can move whenever you're ready. Not yet, I said. Let them walk deeper. I want Conrad Dalton too. I want all three of them. Your call, she said. But Leland, don't wait too long. Once they realize you're onto them, they'll run. 3 months. I'd kept that ceramic mug on my kitchen counter for 3 months, looking at it every morning, while drinking coffee, thinking it meant she finally cared. Sunday morning, I pulled up the spyware activity logs. Kevin had set up the monitoring system to track everything. Every time Simone accessed the feed from Denver, every screenshot she captured, every keystroke she logged. All of it mirrored to my secure server where I could watch her watching me. I scrolled through Saturday's activity, 3:47 p.m., 37 minutes after they'd left my house. Access logged from Denver IP address. Screenshot captured. I opened the image file, my home office desk, the angle from my webcam. And there, clearly visible in the frame, was the bait check I'd left positioned perfectly. $75,000, made out to estate of Thomas Brennan, my fabricated inheritance. She'd photographed it, captured every detail, the account number, the routing number, the signature line. I kept scrolling through the logs. 4:03 p.m. Encrypted message sent from Simone's laptop to an IP address Elaine had already flagged as belonging to Conrad Dalton's network. I called Elaine. Did you intercept the message? I asked. Already on it, she said. Photo of your bait check attached. Message reads, "Can your guys forge and wash this Tuesday work?" Response came back 16 minutes later. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Brood Awakening usual table. Bring the photo and 50 up front. Brood Awakening Cafe in Denver. Tuesday at 2 p.m. I had the location. I had the time. I had the date. What's 50 up front? I asked. $50,000, Elaine said. Down payment for Conrad's forgery services. They're planning to have him create a duplicate check, run it through his money laundering network, and split the proceeds. Do you have warrants ready? I asked. Federal and state, she said. The moment Conrad Dalton touches that forged check in a public place, we have him on conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Add Simone and Desmond to the same scene and we can arrest all three simultaneously. I pulled up a map of Denver. Found a Brood Awakening cafe. Street view showed a corner location with large windows, multiple exits, high-foot traffic area. Surveillance setup, I asked. Noel's coordinating with Denver PD, Elaine said. We'll have plainclothes agents inside posing as customers, cameras on every angle, audio recording. The moment they exchange that check, we move. There's one more thing, Elaine said. We're still analyzing the baby bracelet you turned in. Tech team says it's definitely a device. GPS tracker combined with audio transmitter, military grade. They're working on extracting any recorded data, but preliminary analysis shows it's been active for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks, since before Finn was even born. They were planning to leave it here, I said. Track my movements. Listen to my conversations. Know when I was home, when I was out, who I talked to. Yeah, Elaine said. And the GPS would have helped them time a burglary. Know exactly when your house was empty. I thought about holding Finn, about his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, about the bracelet that was supposed to be delicate infant jewelry, but was actually a surveillance device they'd planted in my home. Every gift was a weapon. Every gesture was tactical. Every moment of warmth was cover for theft. Tuesday, 2 p.m., I said. Brewed Awakening Cafe. That's when we end this. 72 hours, Elaine confirmed. We'll be ready. I sat back and looked at the monitors glowing in my office. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Brewed Awakening Cafe in Denver. I had the location, I had the time, and the FBI had warrants ready to execute the moment Conrad Dalton touched that forged check. The trap I'd baited through the spyware, the exact surveillance tool she'd installed to watch me, was now a 72-hour countdown to federal arrest. But between Sunday morning and Tuesday afternoon, there was one more piece of the puzzle I needed to understand. And it would be the piece that changed everything. That missing puzzle piece arrived Monday morning, with the kind of urgency that meant the timeline just collapsed. Elaine's voice on the phone. Leland, they're running one-way tickets to Costa Rica Wednesday morning, the day after the cafe meet. I was in my office, coffee halfway to my mouth. I set it down carefully. Tell me, I said. FBI travel surveillance flagged airline reservations booked late Sunday night, she said. Desmond and Simone Madden departing Denver International Wednesday, June 7th at 6:35 a.m. one-way to San Jose, Costa Rica. No return tickets. Booked under their real names. Wednesday morning. The day after they were supposed to meet Conrad Dalton at the cafe Tuesday afternoon. The plan was crystal clear: get Conrad's cash Tuesday, flee the country, Wednesday, before anyone realized what happened. If we wait too long after the Tuesday meeting, they'll vanish, I said. We need to take all three at the exchange, inside the cafe. I agree, Elaine said. But that means timing it perfectly. We let them hand over the forged check, get it on camera, then breach from both cafe entrances simultaneously. We'll have Conrad on federal forgery charges, then on conspiracy to commit bank fraud. What about Finn? I asked. If we arrest them both, who takes custody? CPS will be on standby, she said. Denver Child Protective Services. They'll take temporary custody until family placement is determined. Family placement. Meaning me. Meaning I'd be taking custody of my grandson while his parents went to federal prison. Warrants are ready, I asked. Signed this morning, Elaine said. Federal and state. Noel's coordinating with Denver Tactical. We'll have plainclothes agents inside the cafe posing as customers' cameras on every angle, audio recording. The moment that forged check changes hands, we move. Tuesday at 2 p.m., I said. That's the last window. Zero margin for error. Agreed, Elaine said. After that, they're ghosts. When I hung up, I sat very still. 29 hours. Everything I'd built, the surveillance, the bait, the coordination, came down to one cafe meeting in Denver. One moment when all three of them would be in the same room with federal evidence in their hands. Before I tell you what happened when she tried to use my own voice against me, comment A. If you think she realizes it's a trap, or B, if she's still confident. Add one reason why in 5 to 10 words. Quick note, the next part includes some adapted technical details for narrative impact. Monday afternoon, I was in my kitchen making lunch when my phone rang. The bank. Mr. Madden, this is Carol Dixon from Fraud Prevention, the voice said. Carol Dixon, the bank teller handling the call, executed the stall protocol perfectly, keeping the caller talking long enough for the AI system to lock onto the voice signature. We received a wire transfer request for $75,000. The voice authentication is flagging as synthesized. We're keeping the caller on hold per your security protocol. Simone. Using voice cloning technology, trying to steal the fake inheritance before they even got to the cafe meeting. Keep her talking as long as possible, I said. The AI scanner will pinpoint her location. Already running, Carol said. She's getting impatient, asking why the transfer is taking so long. I pulled up my laptop, logged into the bank's security interface. The AI audio frequency scanning system, the one I'd helped them design back in 2018, was already active. Red alert flashing on screen. Voice synthesis detected. Analyzing frequency signature. Geolocating source. I watched the screen. The system was doing exactly what I'd built it to do. Analyzing the digital artifacts in Simone's cloned voice. Tracking the cellular signal. Triangulating her position. 30 seconds. 45, 60. Then the coordinates appeared. 39.7392 degrees north, 104.9903 degrees west. Denver, zero point 0.3 miles from their apartment address. The AI system I'd helped them build in 2018 pinged with Simone's exact coordinates, 0.3 miles from her apartment live right now. Got her, I said to Carol. Deny the transfer. Security protocol requires in-person verification for amounts over 50,000. Copy that, Carol said. She's not going to be happy. I don't need her to be happy, I said. I need her tracked. I called Elaine immediately. Simone just tried a voice-cloned wire transfer, I said. The bank flagged it. The AI system geolocated her to coordinates 39.7392 degrees north, 104.9903 degrees west. That's 0.3 miles from their Denver apartment. She's getting desperate, Elaine said. I tried to grab the money before the cafe meeting. Smart. If the wire worked, they could skip Conrad entirely, fly to Costa Rica with clean cash. Except the system I helped design caught her, I said. The exact technology she tried to use against me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I'm feeding those coordinates to Denver Tactical, Elaine said. We'll have eyes on their apartment until Tuesday. I sat back in my kitchen chair. Simone had installed spyware on my computer to watch my investigation. I'd turned that spyware into bait that lured her to a cafe. She'd tried to use voice cloning technology to steal from me. I'd used the AI system I personally built to track her to within 0.3 of a mile. Every weapon she deployed, I'd already built the countermeasure. Monday evening, I made dinner. Ate slowly. Cleaned up. Checked the monitors one more time. FBI tactical units positioned in Denver. Warrants signed. Bank accounts frozen. Every piece of evidence compiled, backed up, and secured. The ceramic mug in its evidence bag. The baby bracelet with its hidden transmitter. The spyware logs showing every screenshot Simone captured. The intercepted messages to Conrad Dalton. The board was set. I woke up Tuesday at 5:30 a.m. The countdown had begun. Less than 9 hours until the cafe meeting. Less than 9 hours until I watched my son get arrested. The bracelet wasn't evidence, it was a weapon. And that realization came as I sat at my kitchen table in the pre-dawn darkness, coffee untouched, staring at my phone. The baby bracelet was still at the FBI lab, still being analyzed. But I already knew what they'd find. Simone had left it deliberately. Planted it like she'd planted everything else, the spyware, the ceramic mug, the forged documents. Every gift was a trap. Every gesture was surveillance. My phone buzzed. Claire, you're awake, she said. Couldn't sleep anymore, I said. Today's the day. Are you ready? She asked. I've been ready for 3 weeks, I said. The question is whether they'll all show up. They will, Claire said quietly. Greed always shows up. I thought about Desmond, about the son I'd raised, about the man who'd turned my grandson into an insurance policy and my grief into a business model. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., I said. Be ready for the call. The moment they're in custody, I'll let you know. What if they run? She asked. They won't, I said. They think they've already won. That's when people make mistakes. We sat in silence for a moment. 32 years of marriage. A son we'd raised together. A grandson we'd never expected. And now this waiting for federal agents to arrest our own child. I love you, Claire said. I love you too, I said. This will be over soon. I hung up and checked my watch. 6:45 a.m. 7 hours, 15 minutes. At 7:13 a.m., my phone rang. FBI. Mr. Madden, this is Dr. Aaron Vaughn from the FBI Technical Analysis Unit, the voice said. Dr. Vaughn was 41, an FBI technical analyst specializing in surveillance equipment, and he spoke with the kind of clinical precision that came from years of taking apart devices people thought were hidden. We've completed the analysis on the infant bracelet you submitted. What did you find? I asked. It's a military-grade audio transmitter, he said. 600-yard range GPS locator integrated into the casing. High-quality stuff. Government contractor surplus. Military grade. Not a baby accessory. A surveillance device designed for covert operations. Manufactured when, I asked. Serial number traces to a 2019 production run, he said. 4 years ago, long before your grandson was born. How long was it active? I asked. Based on battery degradation and log files, we extracted approximately 17 days, he said. Active recording from the moment it entered your residence. 17 days. The bracelet had been recorded since they visited my house. Every conversation, every phone call, every word I'd said to Claire, to Elaine, to the FBI. 17 days. Every sob, every prayer, every time I said Finn's name, recorded, catalogued, analyzed for exploitable details. Thank you, Dr. Vaughn, I said. Send the full report to Agent Sinclair. Already done, he said. Good luck today. I set my phone down and stared at the wall. For 3 weeks, I'd been building this case, documenting evidence, coordinating with the FBI, setting the trap. But until this moment, until I understood that they'd recorded 17 days of my grief to sell to the next victim, I'd still been operating from a place of hurt, of betrayal, of a father trying to stop his son from destroying himself. Now, sitting in my kitchen at 7:30 a.m. on the day of the arrest, I felt something different. Not hurt, not betrayal, not even anger. Just cold, precise operational focus. I called Elaine. The bracelet analysis came back, I said. Military-grade surveillance. 17 days of active recording. 6 other families targeted with the same methodology. Jesus, Elaine said quietly. I'm done being sad, I said. I'm ready to execute. Units are in position, she said. Denver Tactical has the cafe under passive surveillance. Plainclothes agents will enter at 1:30 p.m. and take positions. Noel's coordinating breach protocol. The moment Conrad hands over that forged check, we move. What about Finn? I asked. The baby. CPS is on standby, she said. Pediatric emergency placement specialists will take custody immediately after arrest. You'll be contacted within 2 hours for family placement evaluation. Family placement evaluation. Clinical language for you'll be taking custody of your grandson while his parents go to federal prison. I'm ready, I said. 2 p.m., Elaine confirmed. Brood Awakening Cafe Denver. This ends today. I looked at my watch. 11:47 a.m., 2 hours, 13 minutes until the cafe meeting. I pulled out my phone and texted Elaine. I'm green, let's move. Her response came 30 seconds later. All units confirmed. See you on the other side. I sat very still in my kitchen. The board was set. The trap was ready. Federal agents were in position. In 2 hours and 13 minutes, I would watch my son walk into a cafe to collect payment for forging my inheritance check. And I would watch federal agents arrest him for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and insurance fraud involving a minor. My grandson would become my son. My son would become a federal inmate. And the woman who'd planted a military-grade surveillance device in my home, disguised as a baby bracelet, would finally understand that she'd been hunting a detective the entire time. I drove to Denver, parked 3 blocks from Brood Awakening Cafe, walked to the unmarked FBI SUV where Agent Teresa Kovacs, the lead field agent coordinating the operation, was running final communications checks. She was early 40s, tactical precision, in every movement, voice calm and steady through the earpiece. 18 minutes early, I watched the cafe door like an investigator keeps eyes on a crucial stakeout. All units in position, Teresa said into her comm. Subjects expected at 1:50 p.m., breach protocol green, CPS standing by for minor custody. I sat in the back seat of the SUV watching the cafe through tinted glass. 4 FBI agents were already inside posing as customers. 2 at the counter, 2 at separate tables. Body cameras are active. Audio recording live. Noel's Denver PD unit staged 2 blocks away. Backup if things went wrong. Everything was ready. Vehicle approaching, Teresa said. Honda Accord Colorado plates match registered vehicle. I watched Desmond's car pull into a parking spot across the street. Saw him get out. Saw Simone emerge from the passenger side. Saw her open the back door and lift out a car seat carrier. A baby, Teresa spoke into her comm. Confirm visual information on infant. Running facial recognition. 30 seconds. 45. Affirmative, the response came through. An infant boy approximately 5 months old. Registration confirms the child registered under their names recently. This is the baby they are using as financial collateral. She'd brought her own child to use as a prop, to recreate the exact emotional optics of a grieving family, to make the scam look legitimate if anyone was watching. They're using the baby as cover, I said quietly. Teresa nodded. Exploitation of a minor, that's another federal charge. I watched them cross the street. Desmond pushed the stroller. Simone walked beside him, calm and composed. They looked like any young family meeting someone for coffee. They entered the cafe at 1:52 p.m. Inside, through the body camera feeds streaming to Teresa's laptop, I saw Conrad Dalton already seated at the corner booth. Mid-50s, silver-rimmed glasses, briefcase on the table. Money launderer and document forger who'd spent 20 years routing stolen funds through shell companies. Desmond scanned the room. His eyes moved over the FBI agents without recognition. He gave Simone a small nod. All clear. They approached Conrad's table, sat down, positioned the stroller between them and the wall. Audio active, Teresa said. I could hear everything through the body camera feeds. The cafe background noise, the espresso machine, low conversation. Then Conrad's voice. You have the information. Desmond slid a thumb drive across the table. Bank routing numbers, account access codes, security questions. Everything you need. Conrad pocketed the drive. Slide a manila envelope across the table in return. Simone opened it, extracted a check, held it up to examine under her phone's flashlight. The body camera zoomed, high-definition capture of every detail. My signature, my account number. $75,000 made out to Desmond Madden. Forged so perfectly, even I would have cashed it. Wire clears Friday, Simone said, studying the watermark. You get 20%. Caymans or Singapore? Conrad asked. Costa Rica, Simone said. Wednesday flight. They were planning to cash the forged check wire the money to Conrad, take their cut, and flee the country in less than 24 hours. That's my retirement account, I said to Teresa. The routing number, that's my actual account. We have it on camera, Teresa said. Conspiracy to commit bank fraud, identity theft, forgery, all three of them. 2:03 p.m. The check passed from Simone to Desmond. He tucked it into his jacket pocket. Breach in 30 seconds, Teresa said into her comm. All units confirm. I watched the body camera feeds. FBI agents at the counter stood smoothly. The two at tables moved into position. 8 months. 8 months to get to this 10-second takedown. 2:07 p.m. Federal agents, hands visible, nobody moves. The cafe erupted. Customers who weren't FBI scattered. Conrad's hands shot up immediately. He knew the drill. His briefcase was already being seized. Simone showed zero affect. Her face went completely blank. Hands raised. No surprise, no panic. Just a cold calculation. I want my attorney, she said flatly. But Desmond spun toward the window. His eyes locked onto the SUV, onto the tinted glass where he couldn't possibly see inside but somehow knew exactly where I was sitting. 11 seconds, I counted. His mouth formed one word, Dad, not a question, an accusation. I sat perfectly still, watching my son's face through the glass, watching the federal agents move in, watching the handcuffs go on, watching everything I'd built over 3 weeks execute with precision. Desmond kept staring at the SUV, at me, through me. I saw shock cross his face, then anger, then something that might have been shame, but I didn't see regret. Not for the forged check in his pocket. Not for the stolen funds. Not for using a baby as a prop. Not for the 8 months of manipulation and lies. Just fury that I'd caught him, rage that I'd been smarter, betrayal that his own father had orchestrated the trap, no remorse for what he'd done, only anger at losing. Subject secured, Teresa said into her comm. Cafe clear. CPS moving in for minor custody. I watched them being led out. Conrad first already cooperating. Simone next face still blank, already running through her victim cover story in her head. Desmond last still staring at the SUV, still mouthing words I couldn't hear. The baby, the innocent boy they claimed was Finn, was lifted carefully from the stroller by a CPS worker. Checked over, wrapped in a warm blanket and carried to a separate vehicle. Another innocent child pulled into their machinery. You want to go inside? Teresa asked quietly. I shook my head. No, I've seen enough. My son stared through the glass as they loaded him into the federal transport vehicle. I saw shock, anger, shame, everything I'd prayed for when I started building this case. But I didn't see regret. Not for Finn. Not for the families they'd targeted. Not for what they'd done. Just fury that I'd beaten them. That cut deepest. 37 minutes after arrest, my son threw his wife under the bus. The FBI moved all 3 suspects to Denver Police Headquarters' 4th floor interrogation wing. Agent Kovacs led me to an observation room with monitors showing 2 separate interview suites, Desmond on the left screen, Simone on the right. Both had attorneys. Both looked composed. That lasted 90 seconds. She coded everything, Desmond said, leaning forward with hands flat on the metal table. His attorney touched his arm in warning, but he shook her off. I didn't know it was a fraud until March. By then we were in too deep. On the right monitor, Simone was already crying. Real tears this time, not the practiced grief from the hospital. He coerced and threatened me when I refused to help. Look. She slid her phone across the table to the FBI interrogator. Agent Kyle Brennan, former NYPD detective, turned FBI interrogation specialist, picked up the phone and studied it for 3 seconds. Your bruise photos are stock images from a 2019 Ukrainian abuse site, he said flatly. Next lie. Simone's tears stopped like someone flipped a switch. Beside me, Agent Kovacs opened a tablet showing a split-screen comparison. Simone's phone photos beside the original stock images with metadata timestamps. Pixel-perfect matches. They practiced this, Kovacs said quietly. Separate betrayal narratives in case of arrest. Each positions themselves as the victim, the other as the architect. How long did you know? I asked. Day 2 of surveillance. Standard criminal partnership exit strategy. First one to flip gets the better deal. Neither realizes we've got them both cold. On the left screen, Desmond's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. He pulled back, addressing the camera directly, as if he knew I was watching. My father will understand, he said. He was a cop. He knows how these things spiral. 28 years I'd worn the badge. 28 years teaching him that justice meant accountability, that the law protected the innocent. And he thought I'd understand fraud, identity theft, exploiting family tragedies for profit. Kovacs touched my shoulder once, brief and grounding, then stepped out. For the next 40 minutes, I watched my son and his wife systematically destroy each other. Desmond produced bank statements showing Simone's name on the Costa Rica property lease. Simone countered with email chains proving Desmond purchased the voice cloning software. Both claimed the ceramic mug, the one with my fingerprints they'd forged onto hospital documents, was the other's idea. Agent Brennan let them talk occasionally, sliding exhibits across the table. 22 forensic reports total. Bank transfer logs with both their digital signatures. Voice clone metadata showing Desmond's laptop as origin point. Conrad Dalton's signed testimony detailing their 3-year partnership, complete with dates, dollar amounts, and photographs. But the exhibit that finally answered the question burning in my chest, where that innocent baby had come from, was the confidential report from the social worker. The baby isn't a stranger, Leland, Agent Kovacs said, her voice softening as she pointed to a birth record on the screen. His real name is Leo. He's the son of Simone's younger cousin, a 19-year-old single mother outside Denver who was struggling with severe postpartum depression. In April, when the cousin realized she couldn't care for him, Simone offered to take him in under the guise of family charity. In reality, your son and Simone immediately used the boy's physical existence to impersonate your deceased grandson, setting up the $500,000 insurance scam to clear Desmond's Kyo-back debt. The cousin had no idea she was handing her child over to a criminal syndicate. The others involved fabricated medical files and online fundraising campaigns. Grieving families started fundraising, and your son and daughter-in-law offered to manage the accounts just to drain them. Yours was the first time they tried a full insurance identity swap. How much recovered? Conrad's Cayman account had $107,000 when we froze it this morning. Down payment on restitution. The rest is scattered across crypto wallets and shell corporations. We'll get some back. Not all. On the monitors, both interrogators presented identical plea offers: full confession, victim testimony, cooperation on asset recovery in exchange for reduced sentences. The deals would expire in 48 hours. Desmond's response was immediate. I'm not testifying against her. We're done talking. Simone said nothing, just stared at the wall with the empty expression I'd seen on suspects who'd already checked out of their own lives. The interrogations ended at 4 p.m. Kovac walked me downstairs to the first-floor waiting area, where a woman in her late 30s sat with a tablet and a car seat. She had the calm, worn competence of someone who'd navigated years of family crises. Mr. Madden, this is Rebecca Morrison, CPS lead caseworker, Kovac said. Rebecca stood extending her hand. He's 5 months old. Both custodial guardians are now in federal custody. We've already contacted the biological mother that she's been made aware of the situation and has indicated she cannot provide care at this time. Given your connection to this case and your son's role as the child's registered guardian, you're our first family placement contact. That's when I saw him. Baby Finn asleep in the car seat, one tiny fist pressed against his cheek. Same dark hair as his brother. Same nose. He looked nothing like Desmond. 8 months of rage surveillance, calculated trap setting, cold professional distance, all of it dissolved. This wasn't Desmond's son in any way that mattered. This was a child born into a criminal enterprise used as a prop in fraud schemes insured for $500,000 like inventory. And he was innocent. The tears came quietly, surprising me. I'd cried at the first infant's memorial service, the real Finn, the grandson I'd held for 6 weeks before SIDS took him in March. But I hadn't cried since. Not when I discovered the fraud, not during surveillance, not watching Desmond's arrest. I'd locked it all down, focused on the case. Now holding this baby who carried my dead grandson's name, I couldn't stop. What will you tell him when he's older? Rebecca asked gently. The truth, I said. But not today. She made a note on her tablet. DNA testing is ordered standard procedure in cases involving questioned paternity. Results in 2 weeks. That's when I understood. Desmond might not be this child's biological father. Simone's betrayal ran deeper than fraud. I held Finn against my chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and trusting. He knew nothing about his parents' crimes, about the brother who died, about the families destroyed in his name. Good. He never needs to. But someone would have to tell Claire. Paperwork made it real. I was now custodian of my son's son, funded by my son's illegal scheme. Rebecca Morrison had driven us from the CPS intake room to the FBI Denver field office, 6th floor victim services wing. It was 6:47 p.m. Finn slept in a borrowed car seat while I signed restitution forms across a conference table that smelled of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Brennan, who had spent the past 2 hours methodically dismantling their defenses in the interview room, now handled the victim restitution processing. And he sat across the conference table, his uniform slightly rumpled, sliding the asset forfeiture reports toward me with a look of grim empathy. And custody of his son, Elaine said quietly. I looked at Finn, still asleep, one small fist curled against his cheek. She wasn't wrong. Elaine opened another file. Conrad Dalton accepted a 20-year plea deal this afternoon. Full testimony against Desmond and Simone, asset forfeiture cooperation, on identifying the other victim families. His attorney's smart, Conrad's the only one who might see daylight before 70. What about Desmond and Simone's tickets? I asked. The Costa Rica flights. Elaine hesitated, then pulled up a document on her tablet. Do you really want to see this? Yes. She turned the screen toward me. 2 airline confirmations. Desmond Madden. Simone Madden. One way to San Jose, Costa Rica, departing June 3rd, 2 days after they'd planned to cash the forged $75,000 check. 2 adult tickets. No infant fare. No baby seat reservation. They were going to leave him. The words on the screen blurred. I'd known they were criminals, fraudsters, people who'd weaponized their own son's death for profit. But this was abandonment with a one-way ticket and a burner phone leaving a 5-month-old baby to become a ward of the state while they sipped cocktails on a beach 1,200 miles south. CPS would have taken custody within 72 hours of their disappearance, Elaine said. We found the tickets during the arrest warrant execution. That's why Rebecca Morrison was already on standby. I signed the restitution form without reading the rest. My hand was shaking. By 8:15 p.m., Rebecca had helped me check into a Quality Inn 3 blocks from Denver Police Headquarters. Room 318. 2 double beds, a microwave, and a view of the parking lot. She'd brought emergency supplies from CPS formula diapers, a portable crib that folded out like a camping tent, and a 4-page instruction sheet printed in 8-point font. He eats every 3 to 4 hours, Rebecca said, demonstrating the bottle warmer. Test temperature on your wrist. Call me if you need anything. I mean that. She left at 8:47 p.m. Finn woke up screaming at 11:32 p.m. I'd caught serial murderers. I'd dismantled drug trafficking operations across 4 states. I'd testified before federal grand juries without notes, and I could not for the life of me operate a bottle warmer. The formula was too hot, then too cold, then too hot again. Finn refused it, wailing with the single-minded fury of someone who knew exactly what he wanted and couldn't understand why the adult holding him was incompetent. Formula everywhere on my shirt, the bedspread, the instruction sheet that might as well have been in Mandarin. Your grandmother would know what to do, I muttered to the screaming baby. I just know how to find people who don't want to be found. At 12:14 a.m. I called Claire. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep and worry. Leland. What's wrong? He won't eat. I've tried 3 times. Test the temperature on your wrist. Your wrist, Leland. I pressed the bottle nipple against my wrist, scalding. It's too hot, I said. Run it under cold water for 20 seconds. Not the formula, the bottle. Then try again. I did. Test it again. This time it felt body warm, barely noticeable. Finn latched on immediately, his cries stopping like I'd flipped a switch. The sudden silence was stunning. Okay, I whispered into the phone. Okay, there we go. Good boy. Claire's exhale was audible across the line. You've got this. I don't, I said honestly, but I'm trying. We stayed on the phone for 40 minutes while Finn finished the bottle, while I figured out how to burp him without dropping him, while I changed a diaper that required architectural precision I hadn't used since dismantling evidence boards. Claire's voice stayed steady, patient, walking me through each step. When Finn finally went back to sleep at 12:51 a.m., she said, I'm driving up tomorrow morning. Don't argue. I didn't. At 3:14 a.m., Finn woke screaming again. This time it wasn't hunger. The bottle didn't help. The diaper was fine. He just wanted something. Comfort. Presence. Proof that someone was there. I lifted him from the portable crib, held him against my shoulder, and started pacing. 47 minutes of pacing. Not for evidence. Not for closure. Just for him. The hotel room was small, 15 steps from window to bathroom door, turn, repeat. My shoulder ached. My eyes burned. Finn's cries slowly softened to whimpers, then hiccups, then small breaths against my neck. I hummed something formless, not quite a song. His tiny fingers gripped my collar, holding on. Your dad stole from me, I whispered, exhausted. Your mom exploited your brother's absence. And here you are, perfect. Finn made a small sound, settling deeper against my shoulder. I missed this with your father, I said to the darkened room. Too many cases, too many late nights. Maybe that's why I stopped. That was the easy answer, the guilt reflex of a parent watching their child's trial on the horizon. But it wasn't true. Not entirely. No, I said quietly. He made his choices. You'll make yours. I'll just be here. At 3:14 a.m., Finn finally asleep in my arms, I understood this wasn't about salvaging my son's wreckage. This was about not failing the next generation. Late, but better than never. Morning would bring Claire and the hardest conversation of our marriage. She'd held Finn for 47 minutes without speaking, just rocking him while I packed the emergency supplies Rebecca Morrison had provided. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were red but dry. I'm flying back, she'd said. You drive with him. You need this. Not anger, not punishment. Permission. Now at 10:37 a.m. Stood in the Quality Inn parking lot, triple-checking the car seat installation in the rental SUV. The base clicked into place with the same satisfying certainty as loading evidence into a case file. Rebecca's instruction sheet was laminated. She'd thought of everything. Formula diapers, backup bottles, a blanket that smelled faintly of fabric softener and institutional efficiency. Finn watched me from the car seat, dark eyes tracking my movements. He didn't cry. Last time I drove this road, I didn't know your name, I said, adjusting the chest clip one more time. Didn't know what I'd find. He made a small sound, not quite a coo. I pulled onto I-70 westbound at 10:52 a.m. No emergency this time. No frantic overnight drive fueled by panic and worst-case scenarios. Just a retired detective and his 5-month-old grandson heading home at a reasonable speed with the cruise control set to 73. A few weeks ago, I drove to crisis. Now I'm driving from it. I left Claire a voicemail at the Colorado-Utah border. We're heading out. Take your time. I'll be there when you're ready. She didn't call back. I didn't expect her to. The highway unfurled west through rust-colored canyons and scrub brush that looked like it had given up on rain decades ago. Finn slept through Glenwood Springs, woke briefly near Grand Junction, took a bottle at a rest stop outside Moab without complaint. The rhythm of it, check mirror scan gauges, monitor baby repeat, settled into something almost meditative. Mile marker 304 appeared just past the Utah-Arizona border. Same rest stop where I'd pulled over a few weeks ago, sobbing into the steering wheel after the hospital had turned me away. The building looked identical, faded beige concrete vending machines, behind scratched plexiglass families, stretching their legs before the next highway segment. I kept driving. Somewhere around the Arizona border, my mind started doing the math it had been avoiding since the arrest. Timeline archaeology, the kind of obsessive accounting that used to drive Claire crazy during active investigations. I replayed the timeline in my head. January was the funeral of the real Finn. February was when Simone sent the ceramic mug to steal my print. May 15th was the drive through the snowstorm and the forgery at the hospital. June was the discovery of the bill, the FBI intervention, and finally, the arrest. 164 days from devastation to custody. Cost everything I'd saved over 30 years, one son sitting in federal custody, one marriage barely breathing. Gained the baby sleeping in the rearview mirror. Your dad called me obsessive, I said to Finn, who was awake now staring at the sunlight patterns on the ceiling upholstery. Maybe I was, but I got you out. Not revenge, recovery. There's a difference. I'd spent 28 years as a cop understanding that difference in theory, victims versus perpetrators, justice versus vengeance, closure versus punishment. But I'd never lived it until Desmond's booking photo appeared in the FBI case file with my signature on the witness statement. My son. My evidence. My testimony that would send him to federal prison for a minimum of 12 years. The highway stretched ahead, heat shimmer making the asphalt look liquid in the distance. Somewhere behind me, Claire was boarding a plane, sitting in a window seat, watching clouds, and thinking thoughts I couldn't guess. We'd been married 31 years. I'd investigated fraud rings, dismantled criminal enterprises, built cases that sent dozens of people to prison. And I had no idea if my wife would still be wearing her wedding ring when I pulled into the driveway. Finn made a wet sound, spitting up slightly onto the blanket Rebecca had tucked around him. I'd need to change that at the next stop. Add it to the list of skills I'd learned in 3 days: bottle temperature, diaper architecture, burping angles. The specific cry that meant hunger versus the one that meant loneliness. Skills I'd never learned with Desmond. Too many case files. Too many late nights. Too many times choosing the investigation over the bedtime story, the stakeout over the school play, the closing argument over the family dinner. Could a man who failed his son succeed with his grandson? The question sat in my chest like a stone. No answer came. Just mile markers and exits and the small sounds of a baby who didn't know yet what his last name meant, what his parents had done, what his future looked like beyond the next bottle and the next clean diaper. Phoenix City Limits sign appeared at 6:47 p.m. Backlit by sunset that turned the desert copper and gold. Finn woke, babbled softly at the changing light, didn't cry. Just made the small observational sounds of someone noticing the world was different now. That's home, I said, taking the exit toward our neighborhood. You're home now. If we do this right, the house would be different. Not the shrine to loss it had become after Desmond cut off contact. Not the evidence staging area it had been during the investigation. Not the empty silence it had been the morning I drove to Denver a few weeks ago. Claire and I had to decide: raise him ourselves, or find him a family that wasn't built on fraud and broken trust, and a son awaiting trial for exploiting his own child's death. But tonight he was ours. The street looked the same: desert landscaping, tile roofs, houses set back from the road, with gravel yards and saguaro cacti standing sentinel. Our driveway appeared on the left, the porch light already on, even though the sun hadn't fully set. Claire's doing. She'd beaten me home. I checked the rearview mirror. Finn sleeping, tiny fist clutching the blanket Rebecca had packed. No answers yet about custody, about Claire, about whether we could survive this. But he was safe. That was enough. The hard part would be explaining it all to Claire. Claire signed first, then slid the guardianship papers across the table to me. We'd talked for 3 hours the night before, Finn asleep between us on the guest bed. Neither of us trusted him to sleep alone in yet. She'd cried. I'd cried. We'd said things that needed saying about absence and obsession, and the 31 years we'd built that Desmond had nearly destroyed. But we were still here, and so was Finn. Now Friday morning, June 24th, we sat in Diane Thompson's office, a Phoenix family law attorney in her early 50s who specialized in emergency guardianship cases involving incarcerated parents. Her walls were covered with children's drawings and court certifications in equal measure. Emergency custody is temporary, Diane said, organizing documents into 3 stacks with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Permanent guardianship requires home study, financial review, psych evaluation. The court wants proof you can provide stable care long-term. Finn sat in Claire's lap, gripping her necklace with the determined focus of a 5-month-old who'd discovered shiny objects. He didn't cry. He rarely cried anymore, as if he'd used up his lifetime allocation in the first week we'd had him. How long? Claire asked. 3 to 4 weeks for the evaluation. Court date mid-July if everything clears. I signed where Diane indicated my signature, looking strange next to Claire's flowing script. 30 years of police reports had turned my handwriting into block capitals and abbreviations. Claire still wrote like a teacher, which she'd been before Desmond was born. Martin Crawford will conduct your home study, Diane continued. He'll interview you separately together and observe you with Finn. Be honest. He's looking for capacity, not perfection. Martin Crawford arrived at our house July 2nd, a court-appointed evaluator in his mid-40s, with a child welfare background and a tablet that tracked every answer we gave. He had the calm, watchful demeanor of someone trained to spot lies in desperate people's eyes. He interviewed Claire first in the living room, while I gave Finn a bottle in the kitchen, just out of earshot. When it was my turn, Martin's first question was direct. "Can you raise your grandson after your son's crimes?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Because he's innocent. Because someone has to. Because I failed once and won't again." Martin made notes, his stylus moving steadily across the tablet screen. "Your wife said something similar. She's been attending grief counseling since June. She told her therapist that managing the trauma of what Desmond did was the hardest thing she's ever faced. Did you know she felt completely hopeless back in the spring?" The words hit me like a fist. While I was focused entirely on tracking the financial fraud, my wife was silently drowning in despair. March, the same month I'd discovered the fraud. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't know. She's stable now." The counselor confirmed it. "But you should talk to her." We did that night. Claire told me about the darkest nights in April, the moments she felt she couldn't carry the weight anymore in May, the moment Finn arrived and gave her something to protect instead of something to mourn. "I already lost one Finn," she said, her voice steady in a way that meant she'd practiced this. "I won't lose another." The transition from temporary emergency custody to permanent adoption didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a quiet coffee shop 3 weeks later, sitting across from Simone's younger cousin. She was a frail 19-year-old girl with hollow eyes. "I can't give him what you can, Mr. Madden," she had whispered, her tears falling onto the table. "I'm drowning with postpartum depression. When Simone took him, I thought he'd have a wealthy home. I didn't know he was collateral for a loan shark. Please, let him stay with you. Let him have the life they promised him." She signed the voluntary relinquishment forms that afternoon. She just wanted her son safe from the shadows her family had cast. Finn's first word came September 3rd, "Dada." He was pointing at me. Claire laughed, tears streaming down her face, and corrected him. "Grandpa, that's Grandpa." But he kept saying it, delighted by the sound, by our reactions, by the power of making noise that meant something. October brought first steps 3 wobbling paces from the couch to my hands, before he collapsed, giggling into my arms. Claire captured it on her phone, played it back 6 times, then texted it to her sister with a message I saw over her shoulder. "He'll never remember his parents. Is that mercy or tragedy?" I answered later that night, holding her while Finn slept in the nursery we'd converted from Desmond's old room. "Both," I said. "Always both." By November, our little boy was pulling himself up on every piece of furniture he could reach, toddling 2 steps before sitting down hard and looking surprised at himself, and smashing his first taste of birthday cake into his hair with the focused determination of someone discovering a new skill. Claire took 47 photos, her laughter filling the house for the first time in years. Desmond sent nothing. No birthday card. No letter. No collect call from federal detention requesting to speak to his son. 6 months. Not one word from Desmond. He chose silence. December 14th, 2023. I flew back to Denver alone. Claire stayed with Finn. Neither of us thought Desmond deserved to take both of us away from the baby, even for a day. U.S. District Court, downtown Denver, courtroom 4. I sat in the gallery 3rd row back, wearing the suit I'd worn to the memorial service 11 months earlier. It still fit, barely. Judge Sandra Reynolds presided, U.S. District Court judge in her mid-60s, with 23 years on the federal bench, specializing in white-collar fraud and conspiracy cases. She had the controlled intensity of someone who'd seen every financial crime variation and was no longer impressed by creativity, only appalled by scale. Desmond entered first, hands cuffed, orange detention uniform, hair shorter than I'd ever seen it. He'd lost weight. He looked older than 28. He looked like an inmate. Simone followed, same uniform, same posture, shoulders back, chin up the performance of dignity in someone who'd weaponized performance for profit. Judge Reynolds read the charges: conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, elder financial exploitation, wire fraud across state lines. The list took 4 minutes. Then she sentenced them. Desmond Madden, 18 years federal, no parole eligibility for 14. Simone Madden, 22 years, the additional 4 years, reflecting Judge Reynolds's finding that she was the primary architect, that without her technical infrastructure, none of the 7 families would have been targeted. The gavel came down. Bailiffs led my son out through the side door. He never looked back, not at me, not at the gallery, not at the father who had spent months building the case that put him there. Outside, snow was falling on Denver. The marshals should have taken a different route, old courthouse limited corridors, and suddenly Simone stood 3 feet from me, chains connecting her wrists to a belt-orange uniform identical to what Desmond had worn an hour earlier. The marshal touched her elbow. She didn't move. 47 seconds. I counted without deciding to. No performance this time. No manufactured tears, no trembling lip, no carefully rehearsed vulnerability. Just her eyes flat and assessing, moving across my face the way a locksmith reads a mechanism not with hatred, but with professional interest, evaluating whether I was worth one final play. I gave her nothing. She walked on chains, measuring each step down the corridor, and never looked back. The flight to Phoenix departed at 7:15 p.m. I sat in 14C and did the arithmetic I'd been avoiding all day. January 8th, the first Finn's funeral. December 14th, sentencing. 340 days between the day everything broke and the day the gavel came down. Desmond's release date, 2041. Finn's 18th birthday, 2041. The symmetry arrived unbidden, the kind that would feel engineered in fiction. My grandson would cross a graduation stage the same calendar year his father walked out of federal custody, middle-aged and unreturnable. I sat with that coincidence over the Rockies, 35,000 feet of cold air between me and it, and decided it wasn't poetic. It was just math. What I'd tell Finn about his father, and when I still didn't know. But I knew what I wouldn't tell him, that Desmond had asked for him. Because Desmond never did. 11 months in federal detention, not one letter, not one photograph requested, not one collect call that got halfway through dialing before he hung up. Silence so complete it answered every remaining question. The cab pulled into our driveway at 10:34 p.m. Rosa Madrigal sat on the porch steps with Finn asleep against her shoulder. She'd been a stranger 18 months ago. Now she was the first person Claire called. She transferred him to me without ceremony, patted my arm once and said what needed saying. Just be his grandpa now. I carried him inside past Claire sleeping on the couch, into the nursery we'd built from Desmond's old room. I didn't put him down. Some nights you just hold on. 2 years is long enough to stop measuring time in damage. For the first 6 months after the sentencing, I tracked everything. Checked the inmate locator twice a week. Monitored the restitution account for updates. Kept a running mental inventory of every open question, the appeals process, the civil litigation against Conrad Dalton's shell companies, the FBI's ongoing work identifying the other 6 families in the network. Old habits from 30 years of case management don't dissolve on a judge's schedule. They dissolve slowly, like scar tissue softening in warmth, and only when you stop noticing them. I stopped noticing sometime around March, not because the questions disappeared, but because Finn started climbing. Everything within reach became a challenge he intended to solve personally. The couch cushions, the porch steps, the cabinet under the kitchen sink where Claire kept the dish soap, which he'd somehow identified as the most interesting location in the house. I spent 2 weeks baby-proofing things I'd never thought to look at twice on my hands and knees, examining the world from 14 inches off the ground. And somewhere in that process, the inmate locator app moved to the second screen of my phone and then off it entirely. Some priorities just reorganize themselves without asking permission. This particular Tuesday morning, I was sitting on the back porch with coffee cooling in my hand, watching Finn conduct a thorough investigation of the gap between the fence slats, where a lizard had disappeared 4 minutes ago. He hadn't given up. He was crouched with his palms flat on the warm concrete face 3 inches from the fence, utterly convinced that patience and close observation would yield results. He was more right about that than most people twice his age. "Gamma," he said, not looking up. "It in there." "I know," I said. "Why it in there?" "Probably scared." He considered this with the gravity of someone filing new information. "Of me, of how fast you move," I said. He seemed to accept this as a reasonable explanation and went back to watching the gap. I went back to watching him. Finn Madden, 2 years and 4 months old. Dark eyes that tracked everything, a laugh that started in his whole body before it reached his face, and an absolute refusal to accept that anything was beyond investigation. He had Claire's patience, and according to Claire, my obstinacy, which she delivered as a criticism, but clearly considered an asset. The DNA results had come back 11 months after the arrest. Desmond was not Finn's biological father. The report had arrived in a plain envelope on an otherwise unremarkable Wednesday, and I'd sat with it at the kitchen table for a long time before showing it to Claire. We'd talked until midnight about what it meant, what it changed, and arrived at the same answer from different directions, nothing and everything, respectively. Nothing about how we felt about the child in the next room. Everything about what we eventually owed him in terms of truth. That conversation was still years away. There was no urgency to it anymore. Finn wasn't going anywhere. The sliding door opened behind me. Claire emerged with her own coffee, wearing the blue cardigan she'd had for 15 years. The one with the fraying cuff she refused to replace because she'd bought it the week Desmond started first grade, and sentimentality sometimes outranks practicality. She settled into the other porch chair without ceremony, the way people do when they've shared a space long enough to stop announcing themselves. We sat in comfortable quiet and watched Finn watch the fence. "He's been at that for 20 minutes, she said. 23, I said. She glanced at me sideways. "You're still counting things." "Old habit. Some of them are worth keeping," she said, which was more generous than I deserved, and exactly the kind of thing Claire said when she'd decided to be generous rather than accurate. 8 months of marriage counseling had taught me to recognize the difference and not push on it. Dr. Grantham had asked us both separately and then together what we thought the marriage needed most. Claire had said presence. I had said patience. Dr. Grantham had noted that we'd each identified what we planned to give rather than what we hoped to receive, and asked us to sit with that for a week. It was the most uncomfortable assignment either of us had received since graduate school, and also the most useful. We were still sitting with it in the best possible sense. Some conversations don't conclude, they just deepen. Rosa appeared at the fence gate around 10:30, the way she appeared most mornings, when she heard Finn in the backyard, with garden gloves tucked in her pocket, and no stated reason for being there. She'd become the architecture of our daily life without any formal agreement. The person who held Finn when Claire needed both hands, who left containers of soup on the porch during the weeks when the legal paperwork piled up and cooking felt impossible, who simply existed nearby, with the steady reliability of someone who understood that recovery is primarily a logistical problem. "Morning," she said, letting herself through the gate. Finn abandoned the fence investigation and ran to her with the complete confidence of a child who has never once been turned away. She caught him, swung him once, set him down with the practiced ease of someone who'd raised 4 children and still had the muscle memory. "Lizard," he told her urgently. "In the fence. In there." He pointed. "Gamma says it's scared." "Gamma's right," Rosa said, crouching to his level. "Lizards like small spaces. Makes them feel safe." Finn turned this over. "Where's my small space?" Rosa looked up at me over his head with an expression that said, "Your move." "Right here," I said, patting my chest. This is your small space. He thought about this with genuine philosophical seriousness. Then he climbed into my lap without asking, settled his back against my chest, and resumed observing the fence from the new elevation. Rosa smiled, stayed for coffee. The morning continued the way mornings had been continuing for months now, slowly, warmly, without the jagged vigilance that had defined the previous year. The guardianship order had been made permanent in October, 7 months after the arrest, following a home study, 2 psychological evaluations, a financial review, and a court date that lasted 45 minutes, and ended with a judge signing a document that made official what had been functionally true since the night I'd paced a hotel room in Denver, trying to remember how bottle temperature worked. Finn was ours. His birth mother, Simone's 19-year-old cousin. The young woman who'd handed her son to people she'd trusted and had no way of knowing where criminals had signed voluntary relinquishment 3 weeks after the arrest. Rebecca Morrison had arranged a meeting between us at a coffee shop, and the young woman had sat across from me with red eyes and steady hands and said she needed to know he'd be safe. I'd told her everything I could tell her. She'd asked if she could have a photo every few months just to know he was growing. I'd said yes without hesitation, and I meant it. And twice a year since then, I've mailed an envelope to Rebecca's office to forward along. I didn't know if she opened them. I sent them anyway. Some things you do for the record, not for the response. Elaine called on a Thursday afternoon in April to let me know that 2 more families from the network had been formally identified, that their restitution claims had been approved, and that the remaining civil proceedings against Dalton's dissolved companies were progressing through federal court on schedule. She delivered the update with the same precise, unemotional professionalism she'd used throughout the investigation, then paused and said, "How are you, Leland, actually?" "Better," I said. "Better than what?" "Better than last year. Better than I expected." "The baby helps," she said, not a question. "The baby helps," I confirmed. She told me to call if anything changed. I told her I would. We both knew the active phase of the case was finished, and these calls were becoming what they'd always been between us. The maintenance of a friendship that had formed in the context of professional necessity and survived into something quieter. By mid-afternoon, the backyard had been thoroughly explored, 2 additional lizards spotted and respectfully observed, and Finn had eaten half a banana and abandoned the rest near the rose bushes in a location he'd forget about within minutes. Claire had taken him inside for a nap around 2 o'clock, the negotiation brief and decisive, and the house had gone quiet in the specific way it goes quiet when a small child is sleeping, not empty, but held. I stayed on the porch. The desert stretched west, the mountains cutting a clean line against a sky that Phoenix turned a particular shade of blue in late afternoon. The kind that doesn't photograph correctly and exists only in the moment you're standing in it. The temperature had dropped enough that the heat wasn't working anymore. A neighbor's dog barked twice somewhere down the street and then stopped. I thought about Desmond. Not with the grinding obsession that had occupied the first year, not with grief or rage or the complicated shame of a father who'd built the case that sent his own son to prison. Just think about him the way you think about weather, acknowledging what it was noting, that it had changed, accepting that you had no control over when it changed further. He would be released in 2041. Finn would be 18. What happened after that was not my case to manage. I'd learned slowly and at considerable cost that some files close. That the job of protecting the living is different from the job of prosecuting the past, and that I could only do one of them now. I had chosen correctly. The sliding door opened. Claire leaned out. "He's asking for you," she said. "Won't settle without the dinosaur story." "Which one?" "The one where the grandfather dinosaur finds the baby dinosaur." "Of course." He'd named that one himself months ago and requested it with the frequency of a child who understands instinctively that certain stories need to be told more than once before they become real. I set my coffee down on the railing and went inside. The story was 3 minutes long. He was asleep before the ending. I stayed another 20 anyway, sitting in the chair by the window, while afternoon light crossed the floor, listening to him breathe in the room that used to hold nothing and now held everything. 2 years is long enough to stop measuring time and damage. I had started measuring it in something else entirely. And to you listening to my story, remember this: the people closest to you can hurt you the deepest, but they can also be your reason to keep going. Those late nights, those missed dinners, those cases I chose over Desmond's childhood, they created the distance Simone exploited. Don't make my mistake. Be there. This family story taught me that love and trust aren't the same thing. I love Finn with everything I have, but I verify everything now. Every bill, every signature, every voice on the phone. That's not cynicism, that's survival. And here's what I believe: God put me through this difficult journey so I could save that innocent baby and get a second chance at being the grandpa I should have been from the start. These grandpa stories we tell ourselves about unconditional trust. Sometimes they're dangerous. Verify. Protect. Be present. That's the real lesson from this family story. If this family story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done in my position. Share these grandpa stories with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible after betrayal. And if you want more grandpa stories like this one, please subscribe to Dad's Revenge Stories. Your support means everything to me. Thank you for staying until the very end. As a final note, certain details in this story have been adjusted for privacy and storytelling purposes. What matters is the truth at its core. Family betrayal is real, recovery is possible, and sometimes the hardest cases hit closest to home.